how would the world react if a trove of documents and videos showing evidence of aliens was all released at once? Well, I don't know, Steven. Probably the same way they reacted when almost that exact thing happened last month, and last year, and the year before that. The only new idea or understanding that I walked away from Disclosure Day with was that Steven Spielberg really has just been coasting on his legacy for a long time. Partly because we're more than a decade removed from his last good movie, and probably 2 decades removed from his last great movie. But also partly because Disclosure Day is the most generic B-tier alien movie I've ever seen, and it offers absolutely nothing special, unique, or new that hasn't been retread 1,000 times. Watching Disclosure Day, you get this awkward feeling that the movie and the people behind the movie don't think that an alien movie has ever been done before. Like they thought the subject of aliens was so unexplored and untouched in Hollywood that by merely having aliens or a story to do with aliens would make it exotic or set it apart in some fashion, and no other effort or creativity was required. Which is weird, because that would have to mean Spielberg forgot that he made Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., and War of the Worlds. Which is unlikely. So the simpler answer is that Disclosure Day is an extremely lazy and unimaginative effort from a filmmaker deep into the twilight of his career. And when you see just how fucking stereotypical and unimaginative the actual aliens are in this movie, that becomes very apparent. Beyond that, Disclosure Day is extremely boring. The message it wants to deliver and have the audience ruminate on is limited to about 4 lines of dialogue in a nearly 2.5-hour film, and all of it builds toward a payoff that just never arrives. And we'll talk more about those flaws and plenty more after we get in a recap of the film's story. So now, I'm disclosing to you this spoiler warning. The movie begins with a guy named Daniel negotiating the return of property stolen from his employer in exchange for the return of his kinda girlfriend Jane. The movie leaves the current status of that relationship super vague for some reason. When the exchange isn't going so hot, Daniel whips out a weird metal bar called The Device that scares the shit out of everyone there like it's a paternity test on Maury. Daniel and Jane escape, and he makes a call to Hugo, the ringleader of this little op, who asks him to hold on to The Device a little longer until some other pieces fall into place. Meanwhile, at Wardx headquarters, the CEO gets to work tracking down his wayward employee, Daniel. The CEO's name is Noah, but I think it's only said once during the entire movie, so I'm just gonna call him the CEO. Back at HQ, they learn that another of their employees, Hugo, sound familiar, is also missing, along with a second, The Device. The movie never gives The Device another name, or even explains what the fuck it does, so I will only ever refer to it as The Device. While he and Jane are on the run, we learn that Daniel worked for Wardx, a company that's closely guarded evidence of alien life for the US government for 70 years. And Daniel made off with the videos and documents that prove that existence because the world deserves to know. Elsewhere, Margaret is a TV weather girl with larger ambitions of being a full-on news anchor. But you wouldn't know of her ambitions when you meet her loser boyfriend, who's a part-time DJ who eats children's cereal and plays the guitar. When a random bird flies into her window one day, something is awakened within Margaret, who starts speaking foreign languages and reading people's minds. Then she goes live on air and spews some gobbledygook in an alien language and collapses. Back with Daniel, he and Jane are hiding out in an abandoned farmhouse where the CEO uses the third and final The Device to telepathically take control of Jane's limbs and force her to sit down and have a conversation with him.
Please have a seat right there. Come on in over here. Have a seat. It's quite a car you've got out there. Thanks. Why don't you have a seat?
He keeps molesting her mind until she gives up their location and agrees to take out Daniel. It's at this time that Margaret gets some instinctual urge to call Daniel, who she's never met and whose burner phone number she just pulls out of thin air, and warn him not to go back to the house. So Daniel goes immediately back to the house, which he finds swarming with dozens of Wardx guards, not a single one of which is apparently on guard duty, as no one sees him walking up and stealing one of their 8 vehicles until he's driving it through them. Then, not knowing where Jane is within the house, Daniel drives the thing straight into the sunroom, I guess just hoping that she wasn't sitting there. He grabs Jane and the two make their escape. The CEO takes control of Jane again, however, and tries to kill Daniel, but Jane just resists it and breaks their connection. Daniel makes a Looney Tunes level maneuver, causing their pursuers to crash, before Jane pulls off another Looney Tunes move, and making the bad guys think they were in their car when it flies off a cliff. But soon after, Wardex's agents track Daniel and Jane down to a motel, where Daniel gives the device to Jane and helps her escape while he gets taken in. Daniel is the CEO's captive for all of about 2.5 minutes before Margaret steamrolls in past security using her mind-reading abilities and busts him out while taking on the visage of people who are important to the people she's talking to. And everyone just lets her leave even though they know it's fake. Margaret and Daniel, who it turns out know each other, having shared a connection within that part of their childhood memories that are missing, talk about the awakenings they've both experienced. And while they're doing that, some car blasts them from behind and tries to push them into a passing train because we need some random action, but they're able to escape. Meanwhile, Hugo, who looks like he's working backstage at the Ellen show, gets a telepathic phone call from the CEO, and the two debate the morality of releasing evidence of aliens to the public. The movie's entire philosophical debate crammed into 2 lines of dialogue that Hugo and the CEO spit out at each other, with noble Hugo getting the last word. Later, Margaret and Daniel are brought into Hugo's warehouse, where he's constructed a creepy, exact replica of Margaret's childhood home. Inside, Hugo has Margaret and Daniel grab hold of the device, and they relive the experiences missing from their childhood memories, where some aliens probed the shit out of them. Come to find out, the aliens infused Daniel with an innate, superhuman understanding of all things math, and they gave Margaret the ability to understand other humans, something that didn't bother to show up in her until her very late 30s for some reason. And the aliens accomplished this by using a ring full of the device and blasting it into their eyeballs. When they're done, the CEO and his agents show up to the warehouse where Margaret grabs the device and uses it to turn everything invisible, leaving us with yet another Looney Tunes move as they escape in an invisible fire truck. They head to Margaret's news studio, where she's going to go live on air and release the evidence, but Wardex's agents manage to cut the power first. Jane shows up after the movie completely forgot about her, somehow knowing exactly where to go and when, and she pushes her way past dozens of Wardex's agents to hand Margaret another the device. Margaret then grabs the device, which is apparently magic and can just do anything, and uses it to restore power to the building. At this point, the CEO literally just gives up on this nonsense plot and sits down to watch Margaret disclose everything, and his agents just sulk off into the night as well. Margaret, getting to live out her dream of being a news anchor, remember, starts to air the secrets Wardex has been keeping for 70 years, making sure to highlight that Wardex mistreated the live alien they had in captivity. National news stations start picking up the broadcast, and soon everyone in the world is watching the news unfold on their phones. The world watches this footage play out in near complete silence for 5 minutes in a scene that might have been powerful in a movie from when Spielberg was a kid, but has nowhere near any kind of impact in 2026. Then Hugo rolls out a feeble old alien in a wheelchair and a bubble while the world watches. The bubble boy elderly alien whispers something to Daniel, who whispers something to Margaret, who looks into the camera and says, "Listen," before the movie abruptly ends. Disclosure Day would have been better titled as Disappointment Day, because that's what this movie was, a major disappointment. Not so much for me, who didn't expect anything from this movie, but for the general public because of the level of marketing and hype this movie got, and for the large number of people that still blindly believe in the Spielberg label. Even the attempted message of this movie is a big disappointment. How would the world react if a trove of documents and videos showing evidence of aliens was all released at once? Well, I don't know, Steven. Probably the same way they reacted when almost that exact thing happened last month, and last year, and the year before that. Alien and UFO disclosures are not even a blip on people's radar anymore, because everyone either already believes in aliens or they see it as bullshit distraction propaganda. They're completely desensitized to the conversation about aliens, and they're going to be equally as numb to this movie, which feels like a vision from a visionary stuck in the past. Like this could have been a decent movie if it came out in the late 90s. But we're in the mid-2020s, and the old boomer slop just doesn't cut it anymore. The movie itself didn't even seem to care about its own message, because it came up in like 2 scenes where 2 characters each said one line in support of or against the release of documents. That's it. The movie never pushed past that surface level discussion or offered much argument in one direction or the other. And Spielberg didn't help this movie's case when he put himself into one of the trailers talking about how disclosure in real life would just make everyone so empathetic and would be so positive for humanity. Because he hasn't popped his head outside his wealthy, Hollywood elite bubble in so long that he actually thinks encountering aliens would make everything and everyone groovy. Try taking a look around, Steven. You in this movie are wildly out of touch. And that was before the end of that same trailer, where he's wasting breath trying to convince people that this stuff is real. Never mind the millions you spent on special effects, Steve. It's all real. Real to him, at least. It was just a fucking bizarre segment to include in a movie trailer, but I digress. Actually, I undigress, because now I'm thinking that the alien in a bubble and wheelchair might be Steven Spielberg's self-insert. Because he's stuck in his bubble that keeps reality from seeping in, and he's in a wheelchair because... well, now I officially digress. The movie doesn't do anything particularly well either. Most of the movie is a boring cat and mouse chase sequence that ends up in them capturing Daniel, and the fallout from that lasts for 2 minutes before he's freed. Then, once Margaret and Daniel understand what happened to them, which doesn't really seem to change anything other than making them pro-alien now, they head to the studio to make the disclosure. And the most tense moment of this movie was when the Wardax agents were planting devices to cut the studio's power. No exaggeration. That was the height of this movie's intensity. Something that was billed by some as an alien invasion movie, reaching its peak when people are trying to turn off the lights. And they do cut the power, but Margaret's magical powers and the device have it restored in literally under a minute. It's laughable, the contrived obstacles this movie threw into the story, and how quickly the characters found some cheap workaround. The villains, if you can call them that, are completely feckless. On 3 separate occasions, someone was able to just sneak or push their way past dozens of agents. And the CEO literally just gives up at the end, because his plan of cutting the power off didn't work. Some action scenes are thrown into the movie for no other reason than to get the audience to wake up. The acting was about as pedestrian as it gets, with not one standout or even good performance. I clocked one genuine moment of enjoyment in this entire movie, and minutes after the movie ended, I had forgotten which moment it was. It's that kind of forgettable movie. And as I said before, the aliens are so unimaginative, which is a perfect visual representation of this movie's lack of imagination. I mean, if you asked a 4-year-old in the 1950s to draw an alien, it would be indistinguishable from the aliens in this movie. Another sign that someone might be very stuck in the past. And the ending was so weird and anticlimactic. They literally rolled out an alien in a wheelchair like it was the ending of Madam Web, and tried to deliver some message that aliens are real, and brave, and beautiful, and we should give them hugs, and money, and maybe a handy. Then they ended the movie mid-sentence, like some kind of cliffhanger where you're supposed to ponder what comes next. Completely deluded in their thinking that anyone would want to hear another word from this movie or think about it again. And you won't actually care to get the answers, but the movie does leave you with far more questions than when it started. Why were Margaret and Daniel chosen by the aliens? What are those devices? What do the aliens have to say? Who fucking cares? Roll credits. This movie feels so generic, soulless, and it's completely devoid of any kind of charm or just anything that makes it feel different from everything else. Disclosure Day is a total letdown and disappointment. And all I think people will take away from it is that the Spielberg label means nothing at this point, as he joins the pantheon of other aging filmmakers who seem to have lost their touch. Say hi to Ridley and Francis, Steven. It's very early on release day when I'm writing this, so these numbers might mean next to nothing in a few days. But right now, Disclosure Day is getting a 75% from viewers on Rotten Tomatoes and a 5.6 on Metacritic. Both are numbers that have dropped precipitously from when I first looked at them just a couple hours earlier. At the box office, Disclosure Day is expected to bring in somewhere between $35 and $45 million domestically over its opening weekend. Now, one thing working in the movie's favor is that it only cost $115 million to make. And the movie didn't look expensive in the slightest, and it didn't really try and do anything, so that number rings true. But even with that low-ish budget, based on how the movie is being received, I would be genuinely shocked if this movie doesn't lose money. As for me, this movie is a boring hate watch that was not worth the hype and is certainly not worth your time or money. I'd give it a 4 out of 10. I just think it's funny that some publications were calling this an alien invasion movie, while the movie doesn't live up to that term by definition, nor by even reaching the excitement or intensity that the term alien invasion evokes. Instead, Disclosure Day was a half-hearted, lazy, low-effort, unimaginative retread of tired tropes and ideas that still somehow found a way to be wildly out of touch with reality. Some people think that Disclosure Day is just another government-backed propaganda piece used to inflame the UFO discourse in the US to secure more military funding. And with such a lazy effort from such a legendary, connected filmmaker, that seems more likely than this being a genuine effort at making a summer blockbuster. Did you buy into the Disclosure Day hype? Did you expect better from Spielberg, or did you think his star had already dimmed? Let us know in the comments. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for calling out Steven Spielberg's Bubble Boy elderly wheelchair-bound alien as a self-insert with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.